Alrighty, welcome back to the Modern Super League. Luis Scott Vargas here with Reed Duke. How's it going, Reed?
It's going great. That was cool watching your deck in action that match.
It's more Josh Utter-Layton's deck than mine, I have to admit. He's played this deck as many times as he possibly can. But yeah,
it seemed like fun. you were able to make it your own there. Did you orchestrate that game to have Grizzle Brandon play for the maximum number of turns possible?
So yeah, I could have tried to go off a turn earlier, and I probably would have succeeded. But given I knew 3 of Sigrist's cards, and one of the ways I could conceive of losing that game was paying 7 life to Grizzlebrand after already paying the first 7, like paying a second 7, not finding Ascendancy in those 14 cards, and then casting some cantrips, missing on Ascendancy, and then just dying to his creatures.
Yeah, it did seem like you were being super careful, really, thinking about the worst case scenario and all those turns. So I have to ask, when I was watching the match, did you have Elish Norn in your deck?
I did. I was
game 3.
I was actually hoping to draw into it and just cast Elish Norn. I just had 7 mana, and I would have been able to attack with a 9/9.
We were all kind of rooting to see that. But.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been pretty sweet if that's what ended up happening. But unfortunately, I found Ascendancy instead, so I was able to win the game. But
yeah.
So we're about to see Cedric Phillips against Sean McLaren here. This is similar-ish to the matchup you played. I mean, instead of elves, we have apes, and Cedric's running the all one-drop zoo deck.
Right, yeah, and I actually I played against and lost to Cedric in the first round last week, so he's got a fairly similar matchup on his hands this time against Sean. Cedric's deck is it's kind of like that middle ground in between the dedicated burn deck and the more traditional zoo deck, but it's got definitely the same potential for brutal fast draws.
Yeah, it's kind of like a zoo deck with a few more burn spells than normal, or a burn deck with a few more creatures than normal, like you said. Either way, it's kind of in the middle there. And yeah, I remember watching your match last week, and it was pretty close, but Cedric ended up just having just fast enough of a draw to take it down. I remember I remember you having Sword of Light and Shadow, Treetop Villages, and like 10 land. That's all I remember.
Yeah, Sword of Light and Shadow, which I did not even come close to even casting because there were too many Eidolons on the table. But I do think that Sean's deck is at least slightly better suited to handling Cedric than mine was.
Well, a big thing here is Sean has lightning bolt, yeah, like you're saying.
Right, yeah. He takes, maybe a little bit more damage from his lands, a few more tapped lands, but lightning bolt just being 1 mana removal spell is exactly what you need for this kind of matchup. Yeah,
and just having access to a 1-drop that will kill their creatures is kind of what you were missing last week. Just your 1 mana plays are all hand disruption, which is fine, but when Cedric leads on a wild Nikado, you'd much rather have a lightning bolt than an Inquisition, and certainly more than a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually quite excited to see this match play out because from my experience with Jund, you do well against opposing creature decks. Like Jund versus Zoo usually is in favor of the Jund deck. However, Jund versus Burn, unless you really come prepared with your sideboard, they just can basically ignore what you're doing and fire a bunch of burn spells at you, and not much you can do about it. So Cedric's deck being in the middle, I'm not sure where exactly how Sean's going to match up.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of curious where, for Sean's sake, I hope that the 2 Kitchen Finks plus 1 Kitchen Finks equals 3 Kitchen Finks, but we'll see what ends up happening there. That might be a relic from a Magic Online list. I'm sure you've had it happen many times where you export a Magic Online text list and it lists, because the cards are different versions, it'll list them multiple times. I assume that's what happened there because it looked like 15 counting all 3. So
yeah, if he does have 3 Kitchen Finks, that is the best card against Cedric's deck, and if he has a pretty good draw with the Kitchen Finks, he's going to be in good shape.
It's kind of funny, before the Modern Grand Prix, 2 weeks ago, Brandon Nelson was also playing Jund, and he was debating between Kitchen Finks and Feed the Clan in his sideboard. And I was like, just play Feed the Clan. It's much better against Burn, and no one plays Zoo. But luckily for Sean, he did not listen. The Kitchen Finks, I think, are just the optimal card for this matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you could board in Feed the Clan against Cedric, and if the draw matches up a certain way, it's just going to be embarrassing. If you can't stop his rush of creatures, 5 extra life is going to buy you half a turn, a quarter, a third of a turn. Not
yeah,
very effective.
You're casting Feed the Clans, and they're just attacking you for 6. So that's a lot less good than against the Lava Spike deck. But and part of the theory behind Cedric's deck, and this is a deck that Patrick Sullivan's been playing a lot as well, is that these 1-mana creatures are essentially burn spells with buyback. And if your opponent can't kill them right away, if Wild Mikado hits you once, then eats an Abrupt Decay, it's as good. It's actually much better than a Lava Spike.
Yeah, exactly. If you've played a lot against the modern burn deck, you are actually usually pretty happy if they go turn 1 Lava Spike you, turn 1 Lightning Bolt you, because it means you don't have a Goblin Guide to deal with right away. A lot of decks in modern, even Sean's, for example, even if he has that Lightning Bolt, a lot of times it's going to be like, fetch, get a Stomping Ground on tap, take 3, Lightning Bolt your Goblin Guide. In that case, the creature has more than done its job.
Yeah, the downside, of course, is your opponent's at 2 and has 2 Tarmogoyfs in play, and you have no cards in your hand, and you want to top deck a Lava Spike. You do not want to top deck a Wild Mikado. So.
Yeah, yep. Burn is a deck where you want to draw your cards in the right order.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Thankfully, so with a deck as fast as Cedric's, so much of the game is determined by your opening 7 cards that it's not like that much of being at the mercy of the top of your library. Certainly sometimes it comes to that, but not always.
Speaking of top of your library, from looking at the deck list in this league, it looks like a lot of people expected someone, probably me, to show up with a Lantern deck.
A lot of artifact kill and
there's a lot more creep and corrosions than I expected to see. I mean, Willie has the full 4. How many did you end up playing?
I had the full 4.
Right. It
was more I had in mind Affinity than Lantern, but anything a little extra for that matchup, I would be happy to
Willie
get.
Specifically told me he expected me to play Lantern, which I don't know what that says about me or what he thinks about me, but luckily or unluckily for him, I guess since he beat me round 1, it's all the same. I played a different strange combo deck instead of Lantern.
Yeah, personally, I felt like I had a pretty good guess, at least for the 6 of the other players. But for you, I was like, it's going to depend what mood he's in the day before the league starts. Could play anything.
What ended up happening was I ended up having breakfast with Josh and Matt Nass on Sunday, where our deck lists were due on Monday, and Josh was just convinced me to play this deck, so I just played it on Magic Online all day, and it was like, yeah, this deck's pretty fun. But I would argue it's more fun than Jund, but I guess you would probably have a different opinion on that.
No, I mean, I was kind of jealous watching you play there. That looked like a good time.
Yeah,
Jund is fun too.
When your opponent doesn't have a bunch of Abrupt Decay, so I'm not looking forward to being in any sort of bracket that involves that.
Yeah, so you lost to Willie in the first round. Going into the second week, were you like, oh great, I have to play against another 7 Thoughtseize deck, or did you know that this matchup was going to be different?
This matchup is significantly better for me. I mean, yes, Thoughtseize is annoying. You saw game 1, I got Thoughtseized for 2 Ascendancies and just got lucky to draw a third one, but not. Sigris not having access to Abrupt Decay in the main deck and only a couple ways to disrupt you in the afterboard. Like, Willie had not only all the hand disruption and Abrupt Decays, he also had Maelstrom Pulse and 4 Scavenging Oozes, so my Unburial Rites plan wasn't even that good. So, yeah, it's a lot better for me. I mean, I would still rather play against a deck without Thoughtseize in it. Like, I think where Ascendancy really shines is playing against another kind of combo-ish deck, like against Tron, because you're a fairly fast deck with 4 mana 4 Izzet Charm. That just doesn't match up all that well against 1 mana hand disruption.
Yeah, actually, I guess the breakout for the deck you were playing, Josh Layton and a bunch of his teammates played it at Worlds 2 years ago, and I was playing Storm. I lost to Paulo, which exactly the way you described, just 2 combo decks facing off where he has a bunch of 2 mana interaction and I don't.
Yeah, so it looks like our players are ready, so let's head down to the feature match area.
Yeah, let's get to it.
And it looks like Sean won the die roll, and being on the play with a Lightning Bolt, it also, importantly, a basic Swamp and a Bloodstained Mire, which could either get a tapped land turn 1 or just a basic Mountain if Sean's feeling like he's not going to need extra colored sources, means that Sean's life total is fairly well protected here.
Yeah, it'll depend whether he decides to get a Stomping Ground right away to bolt Cedric's turn 1 play. Sean's hand has pretty much everything you want in this matchup, with the one exception that Dark Confidant is, like a little bit of playing with fire. He'd much rather it be a Tarmogoyf or something like that. But he's got removal for Cedric's creatures and Liliana to hopefully lock up the game if he could survive that long.
There's even some argument here for Sean fetching a Blood Crypt because he's got multiple Lilianas in hand. So he might want the second black mana.
That's absolutely true. It's going to be a tough decision. Most, but obviously not all of the lands in the deck produce black. So, it would definitely be inconvenient if he drew like his basic forest or something like that after fetching Stomping Ground. I'm curious to see what he'll do. Yeah,
I'm actually curious whether he goes fetch, bolt, end of turn, untap Dark Confidant. If he does do that, does he get a non-basic and pay an extra 2 life? Or does he just get a tapped dual land, untap, and just Lightning Bolt on turn 2? I feel like on the play, you want to get a Dark Confidant out here.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's a good point. Sean actually has the basic mountain, which many Jund decks don't play with. But this is the matchup where it's going to shine, being able to bolt the turn 1 creature without shocking yourself. But it looks like he, being on the play, just decides, play my cards in the obvious way, not necessarily protect my life total.
Yeah, this is kind of what you'd expect Jund to do against most decks, but it is interesting. He got the Blood Crypt, first of all, and the fact that he got it untapped signals that he's going to play Dark Confidant. Then he draws Thoughtseize, which actually, there's definitely some merit to playing Thoughtseize here. If you think Cedric has like a 2-creature hand, it's much stronger to do that.
Yeah, and that is exactly the case. Cedric's hand was excellent this game. But
he would sign up for having this hand every single game he ever plays with this deck.
Absolutely. The
two lands
and 5 spells, and they're even the right mix of creatures and burn spells. Sean's done a good job dismantling him, though. Now it's just basically Cedric's hand against Sean's life total. And we'll see, how that plays out.
I'm not surprised to see Sean take the Monastery Swiftspear. And given that he sees Cedric hand as 4 burn spells, now recently joined by a 5th, I actually would not play Dark Confidant here. I'd be more inclined to just play Liliana and start plussing, because each plus on Liliana, assuming he draws a 3rd land, is equivalent to an extra couple life.
Yeah, that is exactly what he wants to do. Now he is, after not drawing a land, sort of forced to play the Confidant to try to hit that 3rd land. But it's certainly not ideal, not what he was hoping for.
No, I think Cedric's happy with that turn. He would choose to have Sean put a Dark Confidant into play. I mean, Cedric's hand right now is 17 points of burn.
Yeah. So this Confidant's going to have to find something fast, and it's going to have to find the cards in the right order, like flip land and draw Scavenging Ooze or whatever life gain Sean has access to.
Sean might be in the unenviable position of having to kill his own Dark Confidant pretty soon here. If he flips almost any card with a casting cost, it's going to be tough. Well, that was an ideal set of flips. I mean, flipping a 1-drop and then drawing an untapped green source that doesn't cost tons of life means that he could go Inquisition into Dark Confidant here, or into Tarmogoyf here.
Yeah, he certainly could. It might be better to just, like you said, start taking up the Liliana and save the Inquisition Goyf play for next turn.
Yeah, at this point, even with a Tarmogoyf in play, I don't think Sean can outrace Cedric, so he might be on the Liliana try to run Cedric out of cards plan.
The other nice thing about getting Liliana into play is, since it's unlikely Cedric's going to want to spend burn on the Planeswalker, he will eventually, once he's ready, be able to Edict himself and get rid of the Confidant that's otherwise going to kill him.
Inquisition is responded to with the only 4 damage spell left in Cedric's hand, and now Cedric doesn't even care about this Inquisition that much either. If Cedric draws a land, I guess Sean gets to take Lightning Bolt here, and if Cedric draws a land, he can't cast both Atarka's commands, but Sean's in a world of pain here, regardless of what Cedric draws.
Right. Yeah, he's going to need to take the Lightning Bolt and then probably hope to find another Inquisition or a life gain card, of which it's going to be hard to put together some life gain because he needs another green source and a Scavenging Ooze.
But going to 5 from the Wooded Foothills doesn't change the math, so you might as well play this Tarmogoyf. It's one of your few chances for victory.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess this means that if he does find what he needs, let's say, for example, Inquisition for that second Atarka's command, then the Goyf will kill Cedric pretty quickly.
Cedric even has the option of not playing his cards just to play around Liliana, though as long as he keeps one card back, he's fine. If he goes Sacred Foundry, untapped, play Goblin Guide, then Liliana +1 is problematic, but he's going to avoid that.
Okay, yeah, smart play by Cedric.
So Sean needs to hit exactly Inquisition off his draw step or his Bob and not take any excess damage off Dark Confidant. Well, he did one of those two things. If Sean had a Liliana in play, for example, might be able to go like +1 Liliana, Kolaghan's Command you to just discard 2 cards, but right now he can't get 2 cards out of Cedric's hand, and Cedric could just go Atarka's Command, untap Atarka's Command.
Yeah, the key moment in this game was when Sean missed that 3rd land drop, and instead of putting a card into play that was going to dismantle Cedric's hand, he just had to put the Confidant into play, which not exciting against a handful of burn.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that Cedric did not want to, Sean did not want to play Dark Confidant turn 2, but he had no other choice. And yes, if he had a Liliana in play, he would have made Cedric discard probably 2 burn spells by now, which I assume would be enough to at least give Sean a pretty good chance.
The good news from Sean's perspective is that he gets to cut some of these cards after sideboarding.
Oh yeah.
The cards that cause him to lose life are the first ones that come out, the Thought Seizes and the Confidants.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that he wants less than cards like Dark Confidant and Thoughtseize. And we're now in the hope your opponent doesn't see it / misclick phase of the game. I hope my opponent doesn't attack with their 2/2 flower number 2, which is a very reasonable place to be. I mean, I have seen you play on against lethal board positions many times.
Yeah. I have a feeling that Cedric's going to find this one, though.
Yeah, Cedric's in just such a commanding position here that there's really no way he can lose the game.
No, he's even going to upkeep it. Just doesn't even need to.
Still had all these.
See that card.
Well, it might tempt him to do something that he shouldn't do.
Yep. It's a smart play because he could draw like a 2-drop creature or something.
Or a lightning bolt. He just had it all. So let's take a look at Cedric's sideboard here to see how things go for him. I mean, Cedric is playing a deck that I think expects to get worse after board against most people, just because it's such a linear deck.
Yeah. That said, I mean, everything's going according to plan for Cedric so far. He won that game even on the draw, and now what that means is he's going to get one sideboard game on the play, where his deck is definitely at its best.
Yeah, and what I assume is that he might want some number of Path to Exile just to get rid of Tarmogoyf, just because cards like Mutagenic Growth in particular are not that impressive in this matchup.
Yep, absolutely. I definitely expect those 3 Path to Exiles to come in, and from what I remember, I believe he brought them in against me.
Yeah.
And those are, I guess, really the main considerations. Gut Shot would only kill Dark Confidant, which is likely coming out anyway, and Destructive Revelry doesn't have any targets, so it's looking like +3 Path to Exile. And what do you think he'll cut? You mentioned the Mutagenic Growth. Yeah,
and maybe a Searing Blaze I could see being another card to cut. I don't see that has a ton of good targets either. I guess if you expect, I mean, the players obviously have deck lists at this point. If you expect a bunch of Kitchen Finks, I could see you wanting Searing Blaze because that at least mitigates Kitchen Finks. But other than that, I mean, I just don't. People never cut cards like Eidolon of the Great Revel, and they're certainly never cutting Goblin Guide or Swift Spear or any of the other 1-drops. So it really is just like Searing Blaze or maybe like Boros Charm.
Yep. Now, Sean is doing some major surgery on his deck here.
Yeah.
He wants basically to max removal and max out those defensive creatures like Huntmaster of the Fells and Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, he's going to want to side in like a Decay, a Huntmaster, a Kitchen Finks, 2 more Kitchen Finks, and I don't actually know. I guess Pyroclasm's probably worth it because he has enough cards to bring out. It does miss a lot of the creatures, though.
It does, yeah. But yeah, it looks like he has at least 7 cards that he's excited to take out in Confidants and Thought Seizes. Olivia Voldaren is a little slow. Most of the rest of his deck is at least fine. Do you think he'll bring in Duress?
I like duress in this matchup. In general, I like it against burn, and even though Cedric has more creatures than a normal burn deck, duress is still frequently it's going to gain you 3 to 4 life.
Yeah. And a lot of these games are so blisteringly fast that it's almost like a contest to see like how many spells you can cast in the first 3 turns of the game. Duress just being a relevant 1-mana play that doesn't cause you to lose 2 life. I think it's worth it.
And it looks like the players are ready, so let's head back down to the match here. And there's that duress. Hey, yeah. Look, it enables Tasigur too.
Yep, good point. Now, Sean wishes he had a 2-drop here, but a turn 1 play and a Kitchen Finks I think is good enough to keep.
Yeah,
Cedric again with a very nice hand.
On the play, I don't think you can really think about mulliganing the hand Sean has, and he's choosing to not duress turn 1 because you're not taking Cedric's 1-drop anyway.
Yeah, I love this play.
Yeah,
that's really smart.
He can get tapped Stomping Ground or tapped Overgrown Tomb, depending on which one he's in more need of. I assume Overgrown Tomb at this point?
Yeah, and he does not have 2 basic forests in his deck, so he's going to have to get a dual land if he wants to play this Kitchen Finks, and just being careful with the way you sequence your lands so that you don't have to take that 2 extra damage. That's going to make the difference in a lot of these games.
So here you see Sean fetching with his Verdant Catacombs in response to the Goblin Guide trigger. Why would he do that?
I guess what that indicates to me is that he wants to minimize the chance that he's going to draw a land for his draw step next turn.
Yeah, that would be my assumption as well, because he wants to take a land out of his deck, which makes the chances that Goblin Guide flips land a little less, but on the flip side, it makes it much more likely he draws a spell because he has to hit 2 land in a row in order to not draw a spell if he fetches first.
Right, and if the Goblin Guide attacked and revealed a really good card before Sean fetched, like let's say another Kitchen Finks or whatever he wants to draw most, then he's in an awkward position. Does he not crack the fetch and have to take extra damage later in the game, or, it's just a little bit less convenient that way.
Also, he hit a Bloodstained Mire, so it was clearly a good decision. I believe is how it works.
Yeah. So you see Sean really prioritizing getting the creatures off the board here. He's waiting on the duress. He's waiting on the tapped lands. He just wants to make sure he's not taking extra damage from the early creatures.
Yeah, and he's still at 17 life there. The 1 hit from the Goblin Guide, 1 point from the Bloodstained Mire, that's it. So that puts Sean in pretty good shape. So Cedric had an opportunity for kind of interesting play there. He could have played Eidolon before attacking. That way, Sean would have either had to kill the Goblin Guide in response, and then Cedric would not have given him an opportunity to flip a land, or Sean would have had to take an extra 2 damage off the Eidolon. So the downside,
Excellent
of course,
point.
Is that then Sean could just kill the Eidolon instead of killing the Goblin Guide. But I don't know if that's how big of a risk that is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Normally the default move is to play your creatures after combat, but with the particular abilities of both Eidolon and Goblin Guide changes the equation.
So Liliana came down 8 Eidolons. Sean took 2 for his trouble, plus 1 off the Verdant Catacombs, so he's at 14. But Cedric's actually not in great shape here. He's got some burn spells. He's got a Grim Lavamancer, but if he doesn't use a burn spell on Liliana, she's going to take a card from him no matter what. And if he starts having to burn Liliana, then Sean's very happy with that exchange.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough spot for Cedric. Not sure what his best move is. He really wants the Lavamancer to live as it's his last creature, and he doesn't really have enough to kill Sean from 14. But he has the option to either keep a bunch of cards in his hand as a buffer against Liliana, making him discard. He has the option to shoot a burn spell at Liliana. Lot to think about here. It looks like he is just going to keep extra cards in his hand.
Yeah, he did not even play his land, Bloodstained Mire, or the Grim Lavamancer. It indicates to me that he wants to cast Boros Charm or Lightning Helix this turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And either he doesn't want to target the Liliana at all, or he wants the option to keep his options open for the end of the turn, or he thinks that he's willing to trade one of hhis cards out of his hand for one of the cards out of Sean's hand.
Yeah, and Sean has a lot of options now too. I like starting with Liliana, and then he could, if he wants, he can discard the Raging Ravine and then go Duress, Bloodstained Mire, Kitchen Finks, or if he wants to keep the Raging Ravine, he can actually go Duress, Tassiger, Raging Ravine. So,
what about discard the Raging Ravine, crack the Bloodstained Mire, and play Finks and Tassiger? Just put on the fastest clock possible.
Yeah, that could also work, and that leaves Sean, if he gets a basic, which I assume he will, at 15 after the Kitchen Finks. The risk there is that if you play Kitchen Finks into Cedric's untapped mana and Cedric has a Tarka's command to prevent life gain and deal 3, that's an interaction you don't want to have come up if you're Sean.
Yep. But if that happens, it at least means he will not be dead next turn. I guess it would take a lot of lightning bolts for Sean to be dead next turn. He's in pretty safe position, at least for the time being.
Yeah, and even though Cedric, has a lot of cards in his hand, the fact that he doesn't have a third land in play does limit how many spells he can cast. His deck doesn't have all 1-mana spells. It's actually a lot of 2-mana spells. So now Cedric's going to put to the test. If he's casting this Boros Charm, I assume it's not going to Liliana, because if you were going to kill Liliana, you would use Lightning Helix.
Absolutely. At this point, Cedric's making a commitment to not lean on any creatures the rest of the game, at least not ones without haste.
Yeah, he chose to discard Grimlock Minster instead of playing it, and also keep Bloodstained Mire in hand. I assume he's I think ticking off Bloodstained Mire and Path to Exile to feed to Liliana over the next 2 turns, and just hope to top deck Burn Spell after Burn Spell.
Yeah, at this point he needs to keep the Bloodstained Mire in case he's going to cast Searing Blood. Of course, if he draws another land, then he's free to do whatever he wants with the discard. But for now, he really doesn't want to be caught having to either cast that for 1 damage or have to discard it.
Given that Sean discarded Bloodstained Mire, I kind of expect his turn to be Raging Ravine Tassiger here.
Yep.
And the question is, what do you take if you're Sean? Because Lightning Helix is the most damaging spell, immediately at least. So that makes sense to take. There was some merit to taking Path and making sure Tassiger stays alive, but if Cedric's using his cards on your Tassiger, you're not that unhappy.
Yeah, I think so too. And he has the Manland and the Finks as backup. You really just need to make sure you have 1 creature putting a clock on the opponent, putting a clock on the game, and yeah, I mean if he has to wait 1 extra turn to win the game, that's well worth it if it means getting a 3-point burn spell out of Cedric's hand.
Tarka's command is a fairly good draw as far as these go, because that at least can stop Sean from getting value off his Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, it's especially important since Sean just duressed and now does not know about the Tarka's command. He's very likely to just fire the Kitchen Finks into it.
So now Cedric has to decide too, is he fighting over this Tassiger, is he going to discard this Path, or is he going to discard Searing Blaze? I don't think he's discarding a Tarka's command here.
So
one reason to discard Searing Blaze actually is if you could then go a Tarka's command Path this turn, you'll never have cards in your hand again, and Liliana stops doing anything.
That's a good point. He's got a nice configuration here with the Bloodstained Mire and the Searing Blaze protecting him from Raging Ravine. So this way he at least knows that he's not going to die to Sean's creatures next turn. Yeah, because he can kill the Raging Ravine. So he's just got to do some math, thinking about what he can possibly draw to win in a 2-turn window, and how likely that is versus how likely it is to just fight through all the creatures on the opposite side of the field.
And it sounds like Cedric agrees with you here, since he chose to discard the Path and is just going to get hit by the Tassiger here. So we're expecting to see a Tarka's command with the modes deal 3 and you can't gain life. That does mean that this game might come down to a top deck. Cedric isn't dead to these creatures. If he draws like a Lightning Bolt next turn and can cast, Searing Blaze plus Lightning Bolt, or actually I guess he would have to discard one to Liliana starting out.
What he really wants is a Boros Charm to be 2 cards down from the top.
He wants to draw a card to discard to Liliana, Searing Blaze, and then Boros Charm, and then that presumably will do it.
Now Sean made an interesting play there. I thought maybe he would play Verdant Catacombs to have the option to activate Raging Ravine, but he has kept Maelstrom Pulse potentially for the option to Maelstrom Pulse his own Kitchen Finks next turn.
Especially if you attack Cedric down to 3, then you're pretty confident that he's not getting out of it. like he's going to take lethal damage the turn after. So yeah, just turning Maelstrom Pulse into 2 life is a very good exchange for you there. He can also use the Liliana if he really wants to.
True.
The risk on using Liliana instead of Pulse is that if Cedric drew another 2-mana burn spell, he wouldn't have been able to cast it this turn, and then you're just letting him use it instead of discard it. So it looks like Sean is starting with plussing Liliana, and I think we're going to see the play you mentioned. I think we're going to see Maelstrom Pulse targeting Kitchen Finks this turn.
Given that he knows about Searing Blood, or Searing Blaze, I don't think he's going to activate the Ravine. It would also mean having to take additional damage from the fetch land, which is the last thing he wants to do in this board state. So yeah, this just seems like a nice, clean play. Gives very few ways for him to lose next turn.
So what I think
that means very few ways to lose, period.
Yeah, what I think Cedric's going to need to do here is Searing Blaze the now 2/1 Kitchen Finks, and then hope to draw Path to Exile to kill Tasigur. Since I don't think Cedric can burn out Sean, there's no configuration of cards he can draw that does that.
Yep. What about a Lightning Helix? Would that let him survive one more turn? That might be his best draw here.
Well, we're not going to find out, I suppose.
Yeah. It is somewhat possible. Cedric only has 2 Lightning Helix in his main deck. It is possible that the second copy could have been the third card he boarded out. We don't know, but...
Yeah, and because we did see Searing Blaze there, so clearly he did not take at least 2 of those out. It's also, yeah, so Cedric would have gone to 2 off the fetch line, assuming he wants to landfall the Searing Blaze, and then untapped and cast Lightning Helix, gone up to 5. So he could have maybe bought himself a turn with Lightning Helix.
Yep. If Sean had drawn a land for the Raging Ravine, he would play a land and then plus Liliana, meaning that Cedric could not kill the Raging Ravine with his last card in hand, and he would have been dead anyway. And in any case, it was that fairly astronomical for Cedric to have made a comeback in that game. A lot of things would have had to go very particular way.
Yeah, that was an impressive game from Cedric's point of view, just because he fought through a lot of very difficult cards to beat and still came fairly close to beating them.
Yeah. So this third game of the match will be the first one where we see Cedric on the play. I think if he has a draw as strong as the first 2 he's had, it's going to go well for him. But we'll see. I mean, Jund is very punishing if you miss a beat, if Cedric has either 1 too few or 1 too many lands, if he has to mulligan to 6 or 5. Yeah, I mean, it's anybody's match at this point. This is kind of what we were expecting or hoping for from a viewing perspective.
And it sounds like they're ready, so we're going to go to game 3 here. And wow, that's actually nearly perfect. 4 creatures and 3 land is exactly where you want to start, and then you just want to draw spells in the middle of the game.
Yep. And Sean has 3 cards that can answer creatures.
And some good lands.
Yeah, and some good lands. It's he doesn't have all the tools he needs with this opening 7, but it's a great start.
The question now is what does Cedric lead with? Wild Nacatl is the overall most damaging card, but if you expect things to eat removal, you could potentially lead with Goblin Guide.
I think I like his play of going with the Nacatl. Again, even if Sean has the turn 1 Lightning Bolt, you can sometimes either make him take damage off his lands or like fetch inconveniently, get that basic mountain, which doesn't cast a whole lot else.
Yeah, I like leading with Nacatl. It's also, if you lead with something else, you get punished by this Inquisition. And now Sean is just seeing a nightmare hand because he can take one of the 1-drops and then Cedric just plays Eidolon, or he can take Eidolon and Cedric plays 2 1-drops. No matter what, Cedric's going to have a great turn too.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that Sean decided to go with the Inquisition instead of the Lightning Bolt.
Especially since the land he fetched means that he's still going to have to take pain next turn to cast Lightning Bolt.
I guess the fear would be that Cedric has 2 1-drop creatures as his only creatures, and you don't want to miss your window of being able to use the Inquisition to answer one of them.
But given the hand Cedric does have, I don't think Sean's really happy with how this game's going to play out.
Yeah, he's in trouble. What would you take with this Inquisition?
I think you take the Eidolon, but I'm not 100% sure. I guess, well, it's either, I think, Eidolon or Goblin Guide. Clearly, it's not Monastery Swift Spear given Cedric's lack of spells. If you take Eidolon, Cedric goes Goblin Guide, Swift Spear, attack you for 6. Next turn, you play 1 removal spell and you take 3. That sounds like the best course of action, but it's still not great.
Wow, brutal.
Yeah, that was probably the best card Cedric could have drawn. All Cedric wants to draw now is spells, and Atarka's Command is, a 6-point burn spell if all his creatures survive. And still, even if one of them dies, it's still a 5-point burn spell.
Yeah, Sean will only be able to kill 1 creature on his turn. Even if he was to draw another lightning bolt, he only has access to 1 red mana.
Yeah, this game is almost over, and it's Cedric's turn too. I mean, this really showcases why this Zoo deck is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Sean has one of the best possible defensive hands here, and still it's, like a knife through butter.
Yeah, this is not going to be a close game, and Sean had, Inquisition, Lightning Bolt, Terminate, and a bunch of lands that came into play untapped. So,
does he have any hope if he draws a Kitchen Finks on the next turn or anything like that?
Part of the problem is, even if he draws Kitchen Finks, is he fetching Stomping Ground here?
Yeah, fair point. It's a tough one.
So he kills. Well, so if he kills Wild Nacatl, and then takes with a Terminate here, then next turn he takes 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, and goes to 1. I mean, and then Cedric drew Boros Charm. So Cedric can put Sean to 1 here, it looks like. Or no. Is that right? No, I guess it puts him to 3 here. Either way, he's within Boros Charm range.
Yeah.
Yeah, since the Nacatl died, Cedric gets to attack for 6 with his creatures plus 3 with Atarka's Command. That's 9 damage, putting Sean to 3.
Man, super impressive showing by this Zoo deck so far.
Yeah. It's run over 2 Jund decks here.
Yeah. Making me wish I'd played it.
And Cedric keeping a land in hand, perhaps, against a Liliana, though if Sean taps out for Liliana, Cedric clearly is going to win here.
Mm-hmm.
So even if Cedric didn't draw Boros Charm, Sean wouldn't be in great shape because he'd be able to bolt like Goblin Guide and go to 2. But Cedric's drawn Boros Charm. There's just no way for Sean to get out of this.
We're at the dreaded stage of the game where you're revealing cards to Goblin Guide that you just know will not save you.
Yeah. I was hoping Cedric would draw a Lightning Bolt just to have 30 damage by turn 4 here.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of the best possible draws.
There's a Kitchen Finks that you have 3 Rakdos lands in play.
Yeah, turn 4 kill through 3 extremely efficient defensive spells. Wow.
Well, that'll do it.
So Sean McLaren will be your next opponent then, is that right?
Let's actually take a look at the bracket here, so, with Cedric being the winner of his match. Let's see here. So I play the winner of... Yes, I play Sean McLaren. So I'm actually not in love with this pairing because now I get to play against a Jund deck, which, as we've already established, is not good for me. So I'm not very hopeful about my next match, but I also don't expect this many people to play Jund in this tournament. So,
yeah, I'm sure you'll figure something out. So you only have 2 Scavenging Oozes to compete with instead
that's
of 4
true.
this time.
There's a very big difference between 2 and 4 here. So that was a pretty interesting match. Both decks kind of showcased what they're planning on doing, and it turns out Cedric's deck on the play with great draws just kind of ran Sean over. The game was 1 and 3 were not particularly close.
Yeah. Yeah, really impressive showing.
So we're going to cut to some ads here. We've got some messages for you, and we'll be back in a few minutes with my match against Sean McLaren.